All right. All right. Give yourself a round of applause for being here this morning. All right. And if y'all feel comfortable, please move forward so I can feel your spirit. Usually I start out by pouring libations, but I don't see a plant. For those who are not familiar with libations, is when you pour out water or alcohol to okay, all right. So basically it's to honor the ancestors, right? Because we would not be here without our ancestors, without the people who have paved the way for us to be here, right? That goes to enslaved Africans, civil rights movements, like people have paved the way for us to be here. So we must honor and respect the people who have paved the way for us to be here. I think that's a common problem that we have today, is that a lot of people forget the struggle and don't respect the struggle that people had to go to or go through for them to be in the situation that they're in. So when you forget the people who paved the way for you, you lost. You must always remember the people who paved the way for you. That's how you show honor and respect. And it also builds character. So we are here today to talk about African male identity and the creation of the Negro. Let me just say this. Our identity is connected to our survival. Without identity, a people cannot survive. We need an identity, right? And so there's a few things. I may raise more questions than give answers, but sometimes when I raise the questions, it's to make you think, right? To make you think more, because that's what our brain is designed to do. So, African black male identity and the creation of the Negro. Who are we naturally, right? Or are we who they say we are? Are we who we are naturally, or are we who they say we are? So that's the question that I'm going to raise today. Does your definition of manhood challenge systems or people who choose or wish to oppress us? So is your identity as a man connected to fighting against the wrongdoings of our people? Because that is a part of being a man, to fight. Is manhood a universal concept that is defined and expressed the same everywhere? So these are questions that I want to raise. And I do want to start by saying that manhood is not perfection. It is not perfection. Men are not perfect. For me to get to where I am now, and I'm probably the youngest in the room besides Johnny, for me to get to where I am now, I made a lot of mistakes. So manhood is not perfection. All right? All right. Now, I am not Christian, but I am aware that knowledge and understanding exist in all forms of information. In the Bible, in the Quran, in Ifa, which is an African spirituality, whatever you want to adhere to, knowledge and understanding exist in those religions. And so I'm going to use a lot of Bible verses, right, to explain a lot of things that I'm going to talk about today, although I'm not Christian. All right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word, can everybody see this, by the way? Everybody can see this? Okay. Now, forgive me because my eyes are a little blurry, right? I haven't lectured in over 2 years. It's been about 2 years since I've lectured. And I was up all night, working on it. And you want to turn the lights down? Sure. Get a better view. And yeah, if you can see it better. Okay. So I was up all night, and my eyes were, getting blurry because of the laptop. So forgive me. I'm going to be back and forth on this paper, whichever works the best. All right. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word was God. That is very important to understand, right? The Word was with God. God is a creator. God creates things, right? If you look at the second slide, it said, understanding the power of words. All right. Now, the earth was formless and voidless, right? Filled with darkness. And then the Lord God said, let there be light. So with his mere mention of saying, let there be light, there was light. There was a creation from that. Words have power. This is why people say that they cast spells. The spell is to say something negative about somebody. Right? And so the word, if you look at some of the Bible verses, the word is the creating of an individual, of a person. In Genesis 1:27, it says, so God created man in his own image, which means that man has the power to create. Everything in this room, in this world, came out of the mind of someone who thought about it, they spoke it, and then they made it. You understand that? You are a living God. You have the ability to create your reality and also create someone else's reality, right? Reality is someone's perspective. If think about this, for example, Trayvon Martin wasn't a thug, but Zimmerman's perspective of him was a thug. And so that became Zimmerman's reality. Reality can be shaped by someone else's view and opinion of you. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so we're just going to skip forward here. All right, so there was an experiment done by some students, and the experiment conducted leading up to Anti-Bullying Day, which showed students how negative comments can be effective, right? And they took 2 plants, and one plant, they woke up every day, and they said something positive to the plant. The plant grew and grew and grew, and the next plant to it, they said something negative to the plant. Now, which plant do you think died? The negative one. The one that was being bullied, right? So the word, just the mere creation of the word can transform and kill plant life, right? Just the word itself. This is a plant. Plant doesn't have a heart. Plant doesn't have a mind, but it can feel the energy of the word. It can feel the energy of the word. Think about that when you're talking to another black person who say, I ain't like the way that sounded. They ain't feel good to me. I don't like that. Because we feel that energy of the word. We are creating feelings inside of people with the word. All right. Self-fulfilling prophecy. The word, social reinforcement, internalization, and results. If you look at the word, saying to your child, you just like your daddy. You just like your daddy. And when he turned on the television, what he see? Men incarcerated. Now, he is what his mother is telling him is being reinforced by society. That black man ain't no good. All y'all do is go to jail. So it's coming from the word, from the mother or from the father, or however you want to translate it. It's coming from that perspective. The environment reinforces it. Then you internalize it and say, I ain't nothing. I ain't ever going to be nothing. Look at my daddy. Look at the people around me. Right? And then the results of that is the behavior. So we are now created by the word. By the word. Very important to understand that. It's very important how we talk to our children, how we relate to one another is very important to our survival. Very important to our social being, who we are as African people. I identify as African. I'm not sure if everybody else identifies as African. I'm sorry. I'm an African. No matter where I'm born, I'm an African. Whether I was born in the United States, in Jamaica, South America, I am an African. I am not going to allow the people who enslaved me to take away my identity. I'm an African. I claim that I'm an African. I'm an African who speaks English. There are Africans who speak Yoruba, whatever. I'm an African. All right? So I claim that. All right. Power is the ability to define someone's reality and have them believe it. Wade Nobles, very, very great black psychiatrist. Power is the ability to define someone's reality and have them believe it. Power is the ability to call somebody a nigga and have them act like a nigga. Power is the ability to, excuse me, I know there's elders in here. It's the ability to define yourself as a female dog and then act like a female dog. That is power. I don't even got to touch you. I'm going to say it. And I'm going to put it in your mind so much that you're going to act the way that I want you to act. That is power. One of the biggest mistakes we've made as African people is allowing people to define us and not define ourselves. As colored, Negro, etc. We allow them to have power over us. Power is the ability to define someone and have them believe it. We have to define ourselves. All right. The creation of the stereotype. So I'm sure we all heard of the saying, which one came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So I have another theory. Which one came first, the stereotype or the behavior? The stereotype or the behavior. Did we act like that? Or were we stereotyped and did we begin to act that way? Which one came first, right? And so if you look at our history as African people, Europeans defined us as unholy beings, godless savages, uneducated, backwards in thinking, superstitious, cannibals, lazy, hypersexual. Was that the case when we were in Africa? Is that how we acted? Our women walked around scantily clad, barely had on any clothes. Men weren't jumping on them. Men weren't raping them. Men weren't acting crazy. So is that how we are, or is that how they stereotype us to be? Through television, right? Through the 70s and the 60s, blaxploitation films, Foxy Brown, all this over-sexualization. Is that truly who we are? Or is that who they made us to be? Okay? The idea that we eat people, that we're cannibals, that we're ungodly, we're savages. You stereotype the people. Because the stereotype then justifies the treatment. So if I say you a savage, then I could treat you like a savage. If I say you ungodly, then I could treat you as an ungodly person. This is one of the reasons why they say Africans didn't have no souls. To justify what they were doing. Oh, well, I took you from Africa. I mean, you guys were hanging from trees. And if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for me, you would still be, somewhere in a cave somewhere or in the jungle. Right? So they use the stereotype for the justification. We have a quote from Queen Elizabeth who says, "The ungodly African must be brought under the control of the Christian faith. For those people are cannibals, and only Christ himself can rid them of their thirst for human flesh." Okay, the stereotyping. Now, is this true? No, this is not true. Africans have done marvelous things in history. We are marvelous people. We have a history that goes so far back that Europeans call it prehistory, right? History meaning his story, right? So his story, before he even came, we were doing things. So they don't even know all of our history because we were on this planet millions of years before they came. This is why they call it prehistory, because it was their story. We call it our story, because this is our story that we're telling here. But the real historical facts are that Africans are tremendous people, have done tremendous things in culture, in scientific advancements, whatever you want to think about. We have done it. The things that we're looking at today are not new. Things that we created in Africa, things that we molded. And so one of the last great civilizations that we had was the Moorish civilization, who went into Europe in the 1700s. So a little backstory on that. Europeans were going through what is called the Dark Ages. They had plagues. They were living in barns. The kings were eating with their hands and not wash. It was horrible. They were dying off, right? And so the Africans came in and was like, what is going on here? Like, y'all sleeping with animals? Y'all not bathing? What is going on? And so they brought in alcohol, which is the Arabic word, alcohol, right? They brought in different forms of technology, astronomy, different forms of agriculture, different forms of wearing clothing as well, because Europeans would just wear these tattered up clothing, and Africans said, oh, it's summertime. It's summertime. We don't wear that in the summertime. Oh, no, it's wintertime. We wear this. So they brought in different forms of dress, right? I'll give you an example. We often say the European is a liar, and I could agree to that to some extent. The European is definitely a liar, right? But one thing they do is they lie subliminally. So if you watch European movies, they will show you that they used to be cavemen and Vikings and like hairy and just horrible people, right? Walking around with clubs. And then in the next movie, they're this delicate, curtsying people. How are you, sir? And you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. In one movie, you were like these cave-like people, and then in the next movie, you're like these elegant people who drink wine with their pinky up. Like, what happened that civilized you? And that's the Moors coming into Europe, bringing that information, bringing that way of class, bringing what we call classical music. That is African music. The harp and all those things, that comes from Africa, right? So we brought in this civilization. And then at some point, Europeans got tired of our presence and said it is time to go. And they started kicking Africans out of Europe. One of those reasons would be because we start changing the bloodline of Europeans, right? So when you look at most Hispanic people, they are not really African, they not really European, but they got, like, for example, Italians. They have a real brownish hue to them, right? You never find a blonde hair, blue-eyed Italian. They always got that dark hair, olive skin, right? That's because they were mixing for so long, right? Who understood this? Hitler understood this. That's why he said, I want to create a pure Aryan race, the blonde hair, blue-eyed European. Because the rest of y'all are mixed in with those Africans that came into Europe, and we don't need that. And the first people we're going to start with is the Jews, because y'all mixed in the hardest. That's why they always got the curly hair, dark hair. Okay. Y'all understanding me, right? Y'all get where I'm going. Okay. All right. So as you see, Africans came in, bathed in the Europeans. Still to this day, we having problems with white folks taking baths. I don't know what it is. They got a schedule with that. Still to this day, they only take a bath once a week, shower, and there they go. So we still trying to teach them that. They built the Alhambra Palace, one of the greatest structures in Spain. It still exists to this day, right? Still exists to this day. Where in the 17th century, they had affinity pools, where you can look at it and it shows the whole structure of the building. I mean, just phenomenal things that Africans built. And the Europeans, when they start kicking them out, they said, man, we can't destroy this. This is just so beautiful, right? Like the way they structured it, it was done by algebra, which is another Arabic word, And I'm not good at math, but they did some great mathematical things to build it. Let me just say that. All right, moving forward. Hold on. Okay, understanding why there is a lack of black manhood. Understanding why there is a lack of black manhood. Dr. Amos Wilson, who I classify as my spiritual, intellectual father, because if it wasn't for this man, I would still be running around with my head crazy, all right? Crazy with menticide. All right, and he says, if you want to understand any problem in America, you need to focus on who profits from the problem, not who suffers from the problem. A lot of times when we talk about black on black violence, we look at ourselves and say, well, if we stop killing each other, but who's making money off of us killing each other? Who's dropping the guns in the community? Who is creating this? Now, don't get me wrong. There are black people making the music, but who's profiting off of the negative music? Who's making the money off of that? Anything that we do, any problem that we have, the drugs, I don't care what problem you name in the black community, the single parent households, they make money off of that. Oh, you don't need the black man. I got some food stamps for you. All right. And then if the black man's in the house, I can't give you these. And you got to put them on child support. They create the problems. European solutions cannot solve African problems. We have to solve our own problems. Because every solution that they come with is another problem. Because that's what keeps them ahead of us, creating problems in our communities. But we only look at ourselves. We don't look at who's creating the problem. Through the television, through the music, through the drugs, right? There's no coincidence in the fact that if I ask most young black men, 21, 23, 24, do you know who Malcolm X is? Do you know who Kwame Nkrumah is? Do you know who Patrice Lumumba is? They're going to look at me like I got three heads. But if I ask them, do you know who Kodak Black is? Oh, yeah, I know Kodak Black. I know Kodak. You know the person who's poisoning your mind, but you don't know the person who's there to free your mind. That's a problem. They're creating that problem. Okay? So this is why there is a lack of so-called black manhood, because it keeps white people in power. Because real black men say, I'll burn this damn thing down. I'll burn everything down. If I can't have my peace and I can't stand up with my chest out, I'll burn it down. That's a threat to them. Real manhood is a threat to them. So they have to effeminize, right? Miseducate, and do all these things to keep us in that sense. Now, let's deal with the idea of a race. A race is a competition. We do know that, right? We all have a race. Black race, white race, Asian race. That is a competition. But when we think of race, we only think of skin. But it is a race. It is a competition. And they're trying to stay in the lead. They ain't trying to lose at all, because it is a race. Racism is the ability to create institutions, to discriminate, and to hurt people based off of their race. That's where the ism comes in at, right? Racist. just denotes a person who loves and practices a certain thing. So yes, I am a racist in the sense of I love my race. The same way someone who loves science is a scientist, right? Is a journalist. So the ish just says what you like and what you practice. There's a difference between racist and prejudice. We get confused. They don't teach us that. Prejudice is to prejudge someone based off of their race. To say, I don't like you because you black. That's a problem. But to be racist and say, I love myself because I am black. That's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. And we get confused with the idea. People say, Baba Hassan, you racist. And I say, thank you. I appreciate that because I love my race. I love black women. I love black men. Am I prejudiced? To a certain degree. You got to be a fool to walk around here and not look and say, that's a white man, that's a snake, and both of them, they came from the same hole. You got to be a fool to not prejudge a situation. I'm serious. I get black people all the time, you know, the fact that we live in a system, right? And we have to understand how a system works. Where it breaks down in one way, it picks up in another way. I get black people all the time trying to convince me of the idea of good white people. And I tell them, you don't see a problem with that? You don't see you fighting for the idea of good white people more than you fighting for the idea of good black people. Because if you ask a black person, they say, yep, that's how niggas is. That's how we are. That's what we do. I knew he was going to do it because he's going to steal. That's what we do. And when you say something about white people, it's not all white people. But why can't it be all black people? Well, we got to get thrown in the shoebox. So the idea of even trying to convince another black person that, well, not all white people is ludicrous to me. It's crazy. Because, yes, I do know that all white people did not enslave black people. I do know that. But I do know that all white people benefit from the system of slavery. Yeah. They had slave catchers. They had overseers. They had insurance policies. So you may not have owned the slaves, but you got some money off of it. You benefited from it. I was never a slave, but I have the psychological effects of slavery. I'm sitting here speaking English, right? That ain't my native language. Most of us are Christian. That's not our native language. Most of us are Muslim. That's not our native language. So just because we weren't actually enslaved don't mean we still not being affected by slavery now. And just because you actually didn't own slaves don't mean you're not benefiting from slavery right now. Because if I'm born with a psychological setback, then you're born with a psychological set forward. This is why young white children, when I meet them, they walk up and they can have an open and honest conversation. Hey, my grandfather did this and blah, blah. You're like, dang, how old are you? 7? And then black children are like, speak. You got to yell at children. Speak. Open your mouth. Open your mouth. They weren't ever slaves. But their ideas of themselves are passed down from slavery. Generational trauma. So I'm not going to be a fool up here and say, not all white people. I'm going to say, I'm going to put you over there and I'm going to deal with mines first. And when we're strong enough to deal with mines, then we'll talk about something over. But this is black people. We need to deal with black people first. All right. So again, understanding problems. If you want to understand a problem, doesn't matter what the problem is. Look at who's benefiting from the problem. Look at who's making money off of the problem. All right. I see we have a brother over here as a police officer. How you doing, brother? I feel safe that you're here. I appreciate you. I appreciate you because we need more black officers in the force. But I'm going to tell you something. The day that black people clean up their act, they're going to have to fight the police. That's a fact. We live in a crimogenic society, which means that is $1 trillion industry criminalizing black people. If black people decide to say, we ain't doing no more crime, we getting our minds together, guess what? Police officers be out of job, they'll start cutting jobs, right? Probation officers, lawyers. This is an industry built off of the criminalizing of black people. That ain't no lie. Either I'm lying or I'm telling the truth. So if we stop committing crime, this society goes down the drain. Even in the movies. If we say we're not watching this BS movie, excuse me, elders, this BS movie, guess what? The movie theaters suffer. I grew up in a culture where they said Boys in the Hood was a classic movie. I look at it now, I say, what is classic about that? About Negroes acting crazy, but we go out and watch it. So imagine if we got ourselves together, this society will fall. Just the idea of us not committing crime, we will have to fight the police. There has been studies done where when crime goes down in the black community, that officers have planted drugs on people to keep the arrests going up. Because then they have to justify their position. And I'm not saying you, brother. I'm not saying you. But most of the white ones. But they have to justify their position and why they have their jobs. This is why you have black men say, and not all black men, but some black men say, I really didn't do it. And now we have cases where people are coming back and find out they really didn't do it. Because they have to justify why they're here. So even just the idea of us cleaning up our act threatens this system. All right, this is I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it, though. Anybody ever seen the movie Baby Boy? Baby Boy. Okay. In the beginning of the movie, not sure if you're going to be able to hear, so I might skip through it. Tyrese comes on and he says, there's a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And she has a theory about the black man in America, that because of the system of racism, he's been taught to think of himself as a boy, a not yet fully developed human being, et cetera, et cetera. And then she goes on to give the examples, the idea of homeboy, homegirl, crib, like the idea of you calling your home a crib. A crib is for a baby. We call our women our little mamas. That's my little mama. Your little mama? Have we ever thought about how the brain computer works in that sense? That we begin to juvenile ourselves. We classify things in a certain way. Like, why do we call cars whips? Slavery? Like, have we ever thought about these things? I don't know if it's going to play good, so. Has not realized his full potential. Okay. And so this is Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, the ancestor. She is now an ancestor, beloved ancestor. She wrote the book, The ISIS Papers, which is also another book that transformed my life and my way of thinking. She has a chart in the book that talks about the system of racism, white supremacy, and how it works. And she lists out the 9 elements of racism, white supremacy, and how they function. Basically, what keeps white people in power. And so she lists economics, education. The mere fact that we allow these people to create the curriculum to educate our own children. Do we not understand that education is survival? And we send them to their schools. Even though it's a black school with all black teachers, they still teaching a white curriculum. We have to understand that. Even if it's an all-black school with black teachers, black principals, but they still teaching white people propaganda. All right. So economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, and also healthcare. All of those things are connected to controlling racism, white supremacy. Now, someone might say, well, how is sex connected to controlling racism, white supremacy? That's a whole long story to get into. But when we look at the other things like economics, right? Like, who controls economics? Like, I remember one time I went to, where was I at? I think I was in Haiti. And I was asking one of the gentlemen, why is the amount of money, the ratio to the money so different? Like, $1 American is like 15 Haitian dollars, right? And I said, who determines that? Nobody knew. Nobody knew who determines that. Who says how much the United States dollar is really worth? This nation has no natural resources. Barely pumping any oil out. Got no diamonds nowhere around here. They done dug up all the diamonds. Who says how much the dollar is actually worth? They do. And then they say how much your dollar is worth. I'm going to say, even though Africa has the most resources, their dollar is nothing. But y'all taking all the material out of Africa. So economics, education, entertainment. When we look at entertainment, and I know some people might say, but we got BET. BET is not black owned. And BET promotes a lot of propaganda. So everything we absorb through television and through music, white people are putting it out there. And they know the effects it's going to have. They know the effects it's going to have on black people. So they control the entertainment, the labor, employment. Let's say, for example, I reel you back 200 years, right? And we're on a plantation. White man is standing on the plantation, and he says, I got this Negro right here. He can lift 100 bales of cotton right now. He's the strongest thing this side of the Mississippi. All right? I got a woman next to her. She can breathe. She can do this. She can do that. How much does that differ from a job interview today? When you go into a job and you say, here's my resume. I could type 100 words a minute, Mr. White Man. I can do this, Mr. White Man, and I'm going to make you a whole bunch of money, Mr. White Man. I cannot classify myself as being a man if I'm going to ask another man from another culture for a job. That's a problem. Labeling black men as boys is not based on the age of the individual, but more on black men's psychological and socio-economical status, right? It's not about your age, because in slavery, they would say, come here, boy. And the man would be older than the slave master or even the grandchildren. They're basing the idea of you being a boy on the fact that I got to feed you. I have to provide clothing for you. I have to provide medical care for you. And I got to tell you what to do. This is the psychological brain compute when they classify us as boys. I'm taking care of you, boy. Now come here. And also, we internalize that. You know why? Because when somebody calls the police, when someone calls the police, we say, here come the man. Here come the man, right? So there's a movement in the 60s that was called I'm a Man movement. I'm a Man movement. Where black men was saying, I want to control my destiny. I am a man. Treat me as a man. Oh, yeah. All right. Proverbs, what is that? Okay, the wise man will save for the future. The fool shall spend it all up. And who we spending it with? Who we spending it with? There's the Oakland flea market or mall where I work at, and we take the children there for field trips once in a while, right? And I want them to see it at an early age. I say, who controlling the shops? And they walk around and say, an Asian, an Arab. I say, where the black people at? Manhood is connected to economics, providing for your community. If you can't provide, you ain't a man. And if you spending money with other people, that's why they have dominance over you, because they the man. Come bring me your money, boy. Come buy this Gucci shoes that ain't worth crap. Come buy this brand new car that ain't worth jack. Come buy this stupid chain, put it around your neck that ain't worth crap. Give me your money so I can feed my family and then go back to your community with all the bull crap that I sold you to rob and steal from other black people. You ain't no damn man. I don't care how much Gucci you got on. I don't care how much Prada you got on. You ain't no damn man. Men control their economics. Men control their environment. Men go to war to control their environment, to control their economics. Black people, and this number actually went up. This number actually went up. In 2015, we were 1.2 trillion people. You know what that means? That means we only behind other countries that have natural resources like Africa, we were the 7th richest people in the planet. On the planet. Black people in America. There's a documentary that you can look at called How to Sell to the Negro that came out in the 1950s. The 1950s. Where they talked about we have to end integration because black people are spending money amongst themselves. And we need some Negro dollars. We need some Negro pennies. It ain't got nothing to do about how we feel about them, about integration. We need their money. And we need it now. That's what ending segregation was about. The poor white folk was upset. We don't want niggers here. We don't want them. The rich white folks said, shut up, cracker. Get over there. I need their money. And we control the society. So y'all can boycott and stop the little kids from going to school all y'all want, but we want their money. Because the rich white folk, what they say, big bank take little bank? Big bank take little bank. Shut up, little white folk. We running this, and we need the Negroes shopping with us. So hold all your prejudice and your racism to the side while we get their dollars, okay? You can't be a man if you got the Asian and the Arab coming in your community selling things to your wife and to your community. How do we stand on that? How do we stand on that? When all of our money that we work hard for, think about this. If this is not a slave mentality, all the money that we work hard for all week, we take it and go give it to somebody else to enrich their community. That's a slave mentality, man. That's a real slave mentality. All right. Arrested development. So arrested development is a psychological term that deals with the idea of someone who may experience a childhood trauma. Right? Now, trauma can exist in many different levels. I can reassure you that all of us have experienced some type of trauma in our life, whether it be death of a family member, a real bad spanking from grandma or grandpa, or whoever. We've experienced some type of trauma. Now, what happens is that when we or even molestation, which is a big thing we got to talk about in our community. Okay, black men and black women. But what this does is that it arrests your development. So when you see somebody who is in their 30s and their 40s and they act real immature, something happened to them as a child that has them stuck at that age. That's what arrested development means. Emotionally stuck at that age. Not physically, but emotionally. So when you see how they regulate their emotions, you're like, damn, you acting like a 12-year-old. Because something happened to them around 12 that they have not got over, that still replays on their mind, that keeps them emotionally stuck at 12. That's what arrested development is. This is why you have grown black men walking around their pants sagging like, yeah, boy. I'm like, sir, aren't you 40? You have grandchildren. Why are you acting like a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old? All right? And Corinthians 1 says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I thought as a child. I thought as a man and moved as a man. All right, I'm just paraphrasing here. So you see the black man with the video games and the licking the Jordans. Think about this for a second. The idea of manhood, I'll get to that later. I don't want to bypass that. Okay, manhood is exhibited from about 21 to about 45, 35 possibly. That is when you are at the height of your manhood, right? Fellas, you know what we're talking about. That's when you can fall off a dirt bike, get up, man, I'm good. I'm after about 35, you fall down, you got to sit down for the rest of the day and ice that knee. You like, it ain't working. Europeans know that. This is why they target our youth with the music and the stupid stuff. So guess what? I could put you in prison for 15 years, about 20 years. By the time you come home, all that extra energy is burnt out. You're done. You coming home now, you just want to get a job, work construction, and feed your family. And that's what happens. They burn us out. You hear a black man coming home, man, I'm not doing none of that no more. I just want to take care of my family and do what I need to do. Because they wiped out your manhood by sending you to prison. Most of the movements, SNCC movements and etc. were organized by children. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were in their 30s. You're in their 30s running these movements.